pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger roll, Atlantic.
Water towers can fly! Yes!
Echo Delta nominal.
Flight down, lead off. Bring in, let's lead off. Off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.
All right, folks, you know the drill, the little numbers jumping over there, that's good. Let me know if you can see me and hear me, John Galloway, I guess, for Virtual Astronomy Live for NASA Spaceflight. Geez, how am I supposed to introduce this? Here, give me some 5x5s in chat over there if you're watching on the NASA Spaceflight channel. If you're over on Twitch, say hi to me. If you're on the Intrepid's YouTube, say hi to me. If you're on Facebook, I won't make the joke about telling your mom to say hi to me. Anyways, we are here for another exciting, very special episode of NSF Live, and this is a new thing for us today. NASA Spaceflight and Intrepid Museum are actually partnering to bring you these virtual events once a month. So I've been doing them for almost 2 years now with Intrepid Museum. Just across the board, we've been doing these awesome virtual events where we'll have astronauts and scientists and the guy that flies the Mars helicopter and all this sort of stuff on the channel for like a virtual Q&A once a month. And now we're going to have them here in place of one of our NASA Spaceflight Lives on Sundays at 3 o'clock. So we moved the time to 3 o'clock. We've brought the Intrepid Museum awesome content with their awesome guests over here to also share with NASA Spaceflight folks. Of course, we're still on all the other places. If you're over on Facebook, you're on one of the Twitch channels because it's on my channel as well. Intrepid Museum's YouTube as well. We're all across the board. But a little bit of history for people who don't know exactly what this is. Why is it Virtual Astronomy Live? It's like, are we going to be looking at stars? Well, we used to. When we first started these events, I would actually go to the Intrepid Museum physically. It's a museum in New York City. It's an aircraft carrier. It's got all sorts of awesome aerospace exhibits. It's got Space Shuttle Enterprise on the deck and a nice little pavilion thing. And so I would pack up my case with my camera and stuff, and I'd go to the museum, and they would do these stages on, like, talks on the stage, right? And then after the special guest, it'd be somebody at NASA talking about moon imagery or something awesome like that. And then we'd walk out onto the deck of the aircraft carrier, and all these telescopes would be set up. And you could actually look through the telescopes, and you could see the moon and stars and planets and stuff. And so it was originally the astronomy night, right? It was the astronomy night, and we would stream it, and then people there physically could also participate, and it was awesome. And then the world got turned on its head, and we were like, geez, what's going on with this? We couldn't do the in-person events anymore, and so we moved to this virtual sort of format, and that's been 2 years now. I think next month is going to be 2 years that we've done it. Back in the day is exactly right, Dave. So that's why it's called Virtual Astronomy Live. It's the old Astronomy Night events turned into a virtual format so that we can share it with people here. So that's why we've named the show that. We're not going to be looking this month through telescopes or anything like that, but we are going to be talking to some awesome special guests later. 2 astronauts coming up here later. I can lean out of the way. We've actually got Dr. Sian Proctor from Inspiration4, and we've got former NASA astronaut Nicole Stott, multiple shuttle missions and a ISS expedition there. So in about 30 to 25 minutes, we'll be doing some live Q&A. I've got them for an hour and a half. And they're going to be answering questions, telling us about their experiences in space, very different experiences, telling us about their art and poems and poetry and all the different things that they're passionate about. But that's coming up in about 25 minutes. As always, tag us in chat, yada, yada, yada. We'll take your questions. We'll ask them. It's going to be an awesome special event with the topic Women in Space because it is International Women's Month. Now, as we get up to that, I'm going to get something out of the way right now. If you saw the tweet, it said 2 astronauts. And I know that there's a lot of back and forth astronauts, this, that, the other, right? We have Dr. Sian Proctor, who's a commercial astronaut. Remember Inspiration4, that mission. You all followed it if you're watching the channels here. And then former NASA astronaut Nicole Stott. Both astronauts. That's like, oh, well, astronaut, maybe not. Hey, blue car, red car, both cars at the end of the day, and both very interesting ways that we get in space, we get experience, and I do hope that we start to see a lot more types of folks who are able to get up into space and share experiences with us. So get that out of the way right now. Not going to see that in chat. Well, actually, the amount of training that went into that Inspiration4 mission was a huge deal. I know we were all following along with that. So out of the gate, Don't even load it up. We have 2 astronauts on the show today. Now, to get into the rest of the show here, one of the things we do, and this is another sort of thing that we used to do at the museum in person, right? You ever gone to a museum event and you like walk in and they're like playing elevator music or something and all the chairs are laid out and you're like, everybody's filing into their chairs before the speaker gets up on the stage? We used to do that at the astronomy nights, right? They're playing music. I think sometimes they actually had drinks. I guess I can say that. Like a little bar at the back. You could get a drink. But we sort of have a little bit of a pre-show here. And the purpose of the pre-show, we let people sort of get in. I know you get notifications, you show up, it takes a while to click in and that sort of thing. But we do a little bit of a pre-show here, and we do have a very special museum educator, actually lead teaching artist. It said over here lead teaching artist this time. If you've seen my show over on my channel, you've seen her before. Please welcome to Virtual Astronomy Live, Alicia Siegel. Alicia, how are you doing, and are you unmuted?
I hope I'm unmuted this time. Hello. Excellent. Hey, Doss. Hey, everyone out there for our Astronomy Live event today. Lovely to see you all. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. It's a new time slot here on Sundays. It's awesome guests we have. An awesome pre-show, I imagine, right?
Oh, of course, every time. But yeah, let me go ahead and introduce myself again for those of you who don't already know me. My name is Alicia Siegel. I do a lot of the Intrepid Museum's educational public programming, both online and on our on our streaming channels and also on site. And also, I'm also actually a NASA Solar System ambassador too, which is very exciting because I know Dr. Sian Proctor is as well. So lots of NASA Solar System ambassador love. And if anyone out there is also one, hi, welcome for joining us. Nice to see you. But yeah, so we do a lot of these virtual astronomy live events. We like to do this pre-show to kind of warm you up for the main event, something fun, something educational about the topic, and also to fill you in on cool stuff that's happening at the museum as well. At the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum, we do talk about a number of things around sea, air, and space. Yeah. That makes
sense. It's on the 10.
If you do get a chance to come visit us though on site, you're going to get to see some amazing history of those different topics. But of course, space history, just like what you see behind me here, we've got the glorious Space Shuttle Enterprise. So do not miss it if you do get to come. But also, not a lot of people realize why we, a historic aircraft carrier, are also a space museum at all. And it's because Intrepid actually served as a prime recovery vessel for 2 early NASA missions. We had the honor of picking up 2 capsules from the Mercury and the Gemini programs. So we do love talking about space and bringing all of this content to you all as well.
Yep. There's a lot of different ways that y'all do that. I know that you have the YouTube channel where things get posted. It's on YouTube. Look for Intrepid Museum. It's right there on the top. There's a Twitch channel as well where some of the things get shared, the different demonstrations and events. And I know there was a lot going on with Kids Week last month with all the kids at the museum and the science shows on the stage. And y'all were actually streaming some of that. You can find that over at twitch.tv/Intrepid Museum. And there's a Facebook as well. You just go to Facebook, look for Intrepid Museum, plus the website. Like you just go to intrepidmuseum.org. You can keep up to date with everything that's going on. You can visit in person. If you ever go through New York City and you're a space fan, you don't want to miss Intrepid because you get to, well, I almost said get so close you could lick the shuttle tiles, but don't go to the that's frowned upon, not allowed. Don't
lick the shuttle.
You can get really close to the space shuttle. Let's leave it at that. Space Shuttle Enterprise. So
and a ton of other historic airplanes, and we've got a Cold War era submarine. Lots of really cool stuff. We are a National Historic Landmark, so do come, do visit. Absolutely.
Excellent. Your background is actually like a viewing deck, right? Like it's a little raised deck.
It is, yeah. So you can actually walk up here and not quite lick, but over here, real close to the nose.
Don't do that. It was a metaphor, a simile. I don't know if you used like or as or whatever,
but have a glass, screen there. So,
there's a thing you can.
Don't make more work for our operations people.
I'm gonna get an email from the museum after this show. Anyways, I better check my phone right now. Anyways. So pre-show, we've got a little bit of a pre-show to do.
So today's Virtual Astronomy Live is all about women in space. Das mentioned March is, of course, Women's History Month. So we are so thrilled to have astronauts Dr. Sian Proctor and Nicole Stott on the show with us today. They're going to be on in a bit to talk about their experiences. And women in space is, of course, a really exciting theme with the upcoming Artemis missions. Yep. And also more personally for me, something that means a lot to me as a woman in space and science communication too. So today, I wanted to take a look back to highlight some of the amazing unsung women that really got us to this point, because in its first few decades, to be honest, space was kind of a boys' club, right?
It was.
So, Das, if you wouldn't mind spooling up my video,
All right.
let's jump right in.
Here we go.
All right. So, everyone, for some context, NASA was, of course, founded during the height of the Cold War in the 1950s. And during that time, the United States was in this tense space race with the Soviet Union. And that is really largely what spurred the growth of the American space program. It all really stemmed from this idea of preeminence in space. Who had superior rocket technology? Theoretically for exploration, but probably more realistically for potential use on weapons. But with those rockets, then also in time came things like capsules and, of course, manned spaceflight, which, of course, involved the selection of our earliest space heroes, starting off with the Mercury 7, who you can see here. But the question kind of still remained, where were all of the women? So up until the late 60s, the Soviet Union was beating us to everything. They had the first satellite in space. They had the first animal in space, oh, poor Laika, and even the first man in space too, Yuri Gagarin. And the US kept getting beaten, even just by a couple weeks sometimes. And one of those things was getting the first woman into space. So there had been some rumors of women in the Soviet space program, but unfortunately, that particular milestone was never really a priority for NASA. Now, during the Project Mercury, really, in order to be an astronaut, you had to be under 40 years of age and in excellent physical condition. You had to have a height of 5 feet, 11 inches or less to fit into those spacesuits, those small capsules. You also had to hold a bachelor's degree or the equivalent in a science or an engineering field. And you also had to be a qualified jet pilot with at least 1,500 hours of flying time. So I always like to ask, do any of you out there qualify as a Mercury astronaut? Let us know in the chat if you do. Always an interesting thing to ask. So while the majority, though, of these qualifications could be accomplished by either sex, that last one, jet pilot experience, at the time could actually only be achieved by men because the military barred women from jet pilot training until the 1970s, believe it or not. So while not saying it outright, that qualification actually did disqualify all women from meeting even those minimum requirements. Well, of course, 1959, the initial 7 Mercury astronauts were selected, and very much in the public eye,
Oh, stand by 1 second. Alicia, we may have lost your microphone. I am not getting any audio. Just 1 second here, folks. Oh, we just heard you again. Yeah, we got you back.
Okay, great. All right. So what I was saying was they went through all of these really intense things, these extremes, heat and cold, these centrifuges, these endless treadmills, balance and reflex tests, right? Training in near weightlessness. There's that vomit comet, and also things like survival skills. But this actually made some people really start to think about these qualifications a little bit. Why couldn't a woman be just as physically capable as a man just based on these tests? So the pressure was really mounting. The race was heating up, especially in the press, as you could see here. And it was really just one more thing that the Soviet Union was about to potentially beat us to, and something that we could achieve just as simply as having women undergo the training right alongside the men. So the heat was certainly on. And all of this prompted the aviation editor of a popular magazine called Look Magazine to do a feature around this question of the sex restriction. So with NASA's approval, they invited champion aviator and race car driver Betty Skelton to be the very first woman to undergo the Mercury project's testing procedures. They thought that she would be a perfect candidate. She had a competitive background, very quick reflexes in auto racing, and also a lot of really relevant flight experience too. So over a period of 4 months, she traveled across the country to meet with the Mercury team and the Soviet space scientists. She braved this intense testing regimen right alongside the Mercury 7 themselves. And they were actually so impressed by her flying record and skill, they gave her the honorary nickname 7.5. And so she actually became the first woman to go through all of those tests. In addition to a physical examination, she did the over 80 tests, including swallowing a tube to monitor her digestion. She was shocked with electricity while testing her reflexes. There was a vertigo test where they squirted freezing water into her ear. And she also worked underwater to study disorientation. But fun fact, she actually couldn't swim, but she didn't tell them that. But throughout that process, she also noticed rampant misogyny and sexism at NASA. The astronauts and the scientists would say or do things that made her realize that they weren't really interested or even really prepared to seriously consider women as astronauts at the time. There was this one test here where the administrators couldn't figure out what she should wear while lying on this tilting platform. And at first they recommended a hospital gown, but then they thought better of it once they realized that the table actually went upside down with her feet in the air. So instead they gave her a pair of oversized men's pajamas instead. So stuff like that. But her experience ultimately became the cover feature of Look magazine's February 2nd, 1960 issue under the headline, "Should a Girl Be First in Space?" And it was an inspiring glimpse into what might have been. And even though it really was a bit of a publicity stunt, and she knew that, Betty Skelton took the process seriously because she felt obligated to prove that women had the potential to excel as astronauts and that they were just as capable. And honestly, she was right. Based on those tests, the article called her a petite example of the anatomical fact that women have more brains and stamina per pound than men. So this really fueled public interest, and a number of additional women pilots became interested in becoming astronauts, which then sparked another fascinating experiment on 13 women, who are now commonly referred to as the Mercury 13. The doctor who had originally developed the Mercury program's testing protocol for NASA set up his own privately funded program for women, and even said that it might be more practical from an engineering standpoint to send women into space over men, because they generally weighed less, so they'd require less fuel to get them up into space, and they'd also need less oxygen to survive up there. Now, during his tests, there was one participant in particular named Jerry Cobb, who you see here, who even passed in the top 2% of all people to ever take the test, astronauts included. So the evidence was becoming pretty clear that, yeah, women were qualified after all. But at the same time, this really was scaring NASA, who had already, they were feeling this pressure to succeed in the space race. They didn't want anything to go wrong or distract them from their goal. So they had the program shut down. And what you see here on the left is a letter that was drafted by President Lyndon Johnson's secretary for him to sign to be sent to NASA. And it says, "I'm sure you agree that sex should not be a reason for disqualifying a candidate for orbital flight." But instead of signing it and sending it, he wrote, "Let's stop this now," across the bottom, and he shoved it in his desk drawer, only to be found years later. So that didn't go anywhere, but the ladies were undeterred. They continued to lobby. They even took part in congressional hearings. And in those hearings, John Glenn, the first American astronaut to orbit the Earth, even testified against them, saying, quote, "It's just a fact. The men go off and fight the wars and fly the airplanes and come back and help design and build and test them. The fact that women are not in this field is a fact of our social order." Yikes, right? Today, there are so many incredible women doing all of those things he described, but back then, they just weren't allowed. So sadly, the Mercury 13 were unsuccessful in their quest to go to space until just last year, believe it or not. Last summer, Wally Funk, who was the youngest of the Mercury 13 and who completed those tests when she was just 22 years old, was finally given her chance when she had the opportunity to fly aboard Jeff Bezos' first Blue Origin commercial flight at the age of 82. She became the oldest person to go into space until just a few months later when William Shatner broke that record at the age of 90. So that just goes to show that you are never too old to achieve your dreams, right? Love Wally Funk. Anyway, back to the 60s. So 1 year after Mercury 13 lost their battle, the Soviet Union beat us yet again, broke the sex barrier, technically you could say the highest glass ceiling up in orbit, by sending the first woman into space, Valentina Tereshkova. Now, don't get me wrong, it was a giant accomplishment for women worldwide, but as you can imagine, also an incredible disappointment for all of the American women who tried so hard to encourage NASA to change their policies and give women a chance. And what's even more frustrating is the fact that it would be another 20 years after that before America got their first female astronaut into space. Now, the 60s was a time that really propelled the women's rights movement forward. And eventually, when the space shuttle program was launched in 1976, they started to encourage women to apply as astronauts. So 6 women were selected, including Dr. Sally Ride, who, of course, was our first American female astronaut in space, 1983. She had actually applied to NASA after seeing an advertisement in the Stanford student newspaper, where she attended, and was one of only 35 people selected out of the 8,000 applications. But as could be expected, before her first historic flight, the media was all over her because of her gender, asking questions like, will the flight affect your reproductive organs? And do you cry on the job? And actually, NASA even consulted with her about putting together a makeup kit for astronauts to use in space, which she reminded them was, of course, completely unnecessary. And they were also famously very concerned about how many tampons to send her into space with for 7 days. Her clueless male colleagues asked, is 100 the right number? And she told them, that would not be the right number. And they replied, well, we just want to be safe. Was she going to get mauled by a bear or something? So we had come so far and yet still had so much further to go. But regardless, she made history in 1983. And as of today, 72 other women have also gone into space, with 20 more at least 20 more now, who have officially undergone training but not yet completed a mission. Now, of particular note, Dr. Mae Jemison became the first African-American female astronaut in 1992. A year later, Ellen Ochoa was the first Latina woman in space. Then a year after that, Chiaki Mukai became the first Asian woman in space. And in 1997, Kalpana Chawla became the first woman of Indian origin into space. But very sadly, she lost her life during the Columbia accident in 2003. Now, Eileen Collins was the first woman to both pilot and later command a space shuttle mission. And in 2019, we also had the first all-female spacewalk when Christina Koch and Jessica Meir left the International Space Station together to do some routine maintenance. But even that event was not without some challenge. The walk was supposed to have taken place 6 months prior, but it was postponed because NASA didn't have 2 properly sized spacesuits available for them. So it's disappointing. It was embarrassing and really just kind of underscored the many challenges that women face in fields where equipment has historically been designed with men in mind, even beyond space. But that does bring us to today. So astronaut requirements have changed quite a bit since those early days of the Mercury program, thank goodness. Today, the official astronaut candidate training program is the same one they've used since 1978. It's completed typically in about 2 years and has 16 different basic training courses in life system support, orbital mechanics, payload deployment, medicine, physiology, Earth observations, you name it. And these are a bunch of images from modern day training. Some of the stuff like this, it's similar to the old school stuff, tilt tables, but a number of things are updated. This is a centrifuge that can reach up to 20 Gs. That's basically 20 times your body weight. Also, like you can see here, we've got the Vomit Comet, good old Vomit Comet. They're still doing that to simulate microgravity. And they've also figured out other ways to simulate partial gravity too, like you can see here with this hanging stuff. So that is really going to be helpful for practicing to work on the moon for our upcoming Artemis missions. Also, virtual reality is increasingly becoming a popular tool to help to really immerse the astronauts into the world of space. They've got a whole virtual reality lab that simulates visualizations and even things like pressure and lighting and mass and inertia. So helpful for things again like spacewalks and ISS training. And talk about an upgrade, they now actually have a giant underwater training facility called the Neutral Buoyancy Lab that has a full-size replica of the International Space Station inside of the world's largest swimming pool that's filled with 6 million gallons of water. And they use virtual reality inside of that pool too. So they currently say that a 6-month mission to the ISS takes about 5 years of training. And yeah, I mentioned the requirements have changed a little bit throughout the years. So today, if someone wants to become a NASA astronaut, the basic requirements are to be a US citizen. You have to hold a master's degree in a STEM field like science, tech, math, or engineering, followed by 2 years of relevant professional experience or 1,000 hours of pilot time in a jet aircraft. Now that's open to everyone, thank goodness. And then you also have to pass NASA's astronaut physical, which also is not quite as intense as some of the stuff that I mentioned earlier. They also say you have to have skills in leadership, teamwork, and communications. So you apply, they review the applications, they invite a small group back of only the most highly qualified candidates for interviews, then half are invited back from that, and then they select their candidates. And then you go through the training and hopefully get selected for the mission. But let's say you've always wanted to go to space, but you're not quite ready for a career change, or you can't really fit all that training into your schedule. Don't worry, there are other ways, thanks to private companies. You could buy a ticket, you could earn a ticket, you could even win a ticket to go to space these days. There are a number of ways that you could actually get up there. And in a bit, you are going to hear from 2 women that scored their seats in 2 completely different ways. So we've certainly come a long way since the Mercury program. Now NASA has some long-term goals starting with the Artemis missions. They're already on their way. This is a visual of the first Artemis mission, which is going to be coming up soon, hopefully. The ultimate hope is that by 2024, we will send our first woman and next man all the way to the moon. The name, of course, stems from the fact that Artemis in mythology was Apollo's twin sister, goddess of the moon. So very fitting that the first missions, of course, to the moon were Apollo. And now this one is with the goal of landing a woman on the moon, is Artemis. And the hope really is that eventually we can set up a base there as a jumping off point for further missions, even things off like to Mars. So they'd like to set up something called Gateway to assist with that. And who knows, maybe some little girl out there watching this right now will become inspired, and you might be the first woman to set foot on Mars someday using all of this technology. So overall, everyone, though historically they haven't frequently been highlighted, women have played an important role as astronauts in this industry. They've really had to fight to be recognized as equals, even in space, but many of them have paved the way for the rights and opportunities that are available for the women of today and tomorrow. And at the Intrepid Museum, we are always championing women and girls in STEM. And I'm actually excited to share that in the coming year, we've got a number of very exciting things coming up. We just held our annual Girls in Science and Engineering Day Festival last weekend. Next weekend, on Saturday the 26th, we're hosting a free virtual mentorship day for teens over Zoom with mentors from a variety of fields. And this is actually open to anyone across the country, but really geared towards ages 14 through 17. So please do spread the word. You can sign up at intrepidmuseum.org under the Education and Teen Events tab. We've also got an amazing 6-week summer program called Goals for Girls. That's greater opportunities advancing leadership in science for girls. And that's geared towards 8th and 9th grade girls in New York City. And it engages them with STEM topics and experiments. And they meet special invited guests. They hone their public speaking skills all throughout the program. And the deadline to apply to that is actually tomorrow. So if you're interested or if you know someone who might be, please do check that out as well. It's an incredible program. And again, information can be found on our website, intrepidmuseum.org. And we've also got some other really exciting surprises coming up later this year that will honor some of these early pioneering women, just like Betty Skelton and those first female astronauts at NASA as well. So stay tuned and visit our website, intrepidmuseum.org, for more information as it's released throughout the year.
All right. Thank you, Alicia, for all of the interesting background there. That's I didn't know some of those things, and a lot of it makes sense. It's like you look back and you're like, oh, this doesn't fit. Oh, we only have this size, whatever. A bunch of things that you wouldn't normally think about, but all the training that's required to go into it, everything that happens, just think about all the specialized equipment and stuff. I learned a lot during the little bit of a video history lesson there. I don't know. I don't even know how to say that. Pre-show.
It's something to think about as you go in and you start to talk to these amazing women that you're going to hear from in just a couple minutes.
Yep.
They've been through so much, and they are definitely riding on the shoulders of so many of these amazing women that led us to this point today. So just a bravo to them, and a hurrah for the next wave of women coming through as well. And even the next generation, any little girls out there watching who are inspired by space. I know I'm one. I want to go to space still.
Right.
So it's a wonderful thing, and representation matters. So happy Women's History Month.
Outstanding. Y'all, again, Alicia Seagull is with Intrepid Museum. You can see her at a few different places on the internets here with all the live streams and stuff. And also hope we see some of the awesome NASA Solar System Ambassador things coming from you as well. Massive congratulations on that. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. And a shout out to Dr. Sian Proctor too. Again,
there you go.
Love it.
All right. So everybody say thank you to Alicia here. We're going to hop back over. Alicia, we'll see you next time on an virtual Astronomy Live.
That's right. And just a quick plug, next month, actually, it's going to be on site, April 29th from 5 to 9. If you are in New York City, come on by. We might be live streaming that one as well. Hopefully we will. But definitely come on by. We're going to have some really fun events for the whole family, a lot of activities going on, and also some stargazing on our flight deck. So excited to welcome everyone back on site to our ship. So please do come if you're in the New York City area.
All right. Y'all, one more time, give a round of applause, I guess. However you do that in chat. It's the 2 slashes in chat. You put 2 slashes together for Alicia here. Alicia, thank you so much. We always appreciate you being on the show and sharing with us.
All right. Have a great Astronomy Live, everyone. See you next time.
So, folks, now it's time for, I guess, the main event. It's always sort of weird to say that because that's quite an event whenever Alicia hops on and gives us a history lesson or more information about what we're going to be talking about. But now it's time for me to go over here to this other computer monitor I need to click on and let in our 2 special guests and our moderator. Again, Dr. Sian Proctor is coming up next in just a few minutes. We're also going to have former NASA astronaut Nicole Stott. Got to lean further out of the way. That's the way they made the graphic. I could actually sort of anyways, we're going to get a copyright strike if I do that. Let me go see if I can't get them into the stream. And when we come back, we'll have our special guest. Remember, it's just like one of our normal shows, live Q&A. Ask us questions. You know how to do it. You can tag us. You can use the word question if you're over on Twitch. If you're in the NSF stream, put at NASASpaceflight. Also, one quick thing. Remember, the Virtual Astronomy Lives don't just happen. They are supported through a NASA cooperative agreement awarded to the New York Space Grant Consortium. Could you imagine someone on the news pointing at the teleprompter where that has the thing they're supposed to read? Well, it would be here. I wouldn't have to point at it. I'd be pointing at y'all. But when I come back, I will see if we have our special guests, and give me just a few seconds here. In the meantime, here's a little bit of a video about more things going on out at Intrepid Museum.
Every year, more than 1 million visitors embark on a voyage of discovery at Intrepid, a museum on board an aircraft carrier devoted to the intersection of history, science, innovation, and service. They come to the museum to learn, to explore, to engage, and to see firsthand the artifacts that marked critical moments in history and spark our future. They are up close and personal with living history, learning about the past, while contemplating the possibilities of tomorrow through 21st century technology. Within Intrepid steel walls are moments. A sense of wonder when a student sees history come alive, goosebumps when a memory is sparked, and understanding when a returning service member connects with a fellow veteran. But Intrepid's reach extends far beyond this great carrier's steel walls and decks. Every day, it is making a difference in the lives of so many, in our immediate neighborhood and all around the world. Intrepid also brings learning experiences to students participating in CASA, New York City's cultural after-school adventures program throughout its 5 boroughs. Designed to support the diverse needs of learners in New York City public schools, Intrepid's CASA programs integrate history, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math into out-of-school time experiences to help build in-school success. Our vet video chats reconnect veterans with the legacy of service.
My name is Charlotte. I'm really happy to be connecting with you all. And these are artifacts that are related to work, but also to leisure.
We are a ship of ideas, sailing forth to communities near and far, to schools, libraries, housing projects, senior centers, correctional facilities, veterans centers, and children's hospitals to engage and inspire those who can't come to us.
All right. Now you got audio, don't you? That's our bug. See, the show had gone too well up until this point. We do 30 minutes where we can have the one bug for the show happen, and then we always get the bug out of the way in the first 30 minutes, but it went too well, and now we've had our bug. So we should be good to go. Chad is yelling at me that we're good to go now. Okay, you can tell when he spotted it because you could see on my face when I had spotted what the bug was. All right, let's go ahead and now, new and improved stream with audio, let's get our special guest introduced here. You've seen on the show before our moderator, Summer Ash. Summer is a regular part of the Virtual Astronomy Live shows here, and she will be helping lead some of the discussion here. Summer, thank you so much for joining us.
Always happy to be here and always happy to talk about space.
All right. And then also, I've already done a few introductions here, but please welcome to the stream Dr. Sian Proctor, over this way, right here, and Nicole Stott, down this way. Summer, do you want to give them a more in-depth introduction here?
Absolutely.
All right. I will turn it over to you.
Okay, so I first want to say that both our guests are these multifaceted women that I cannot wait to talk to. Starting with Nicole Stott, she's an astronaut, aquanaut, artist, mom, author, and a NASA veteran astronaut with 2 space flights and 104 days as a crew member, both on the space shuttle and the International Space Station. And then also joining us, Dr. Sian Proctor is a geoscientist, explorer, space artist, and astronaut. And most recently, she was the pilot, mission pilot for the Inspiration 4 all-civilian orbital mission to space, which happened last fall. And both of these women are also incredibly artistic and have created works of art both on and off of this planet. So we're gonna get to all of that fun stuff. But first, I always just like to hear how people got to where they are today and sort of how they first got interested in science and space and eventually art as well. So would each of you just sort of give us a brief overview of how you got interested in space and then eventually becoming an astronaut?
Sure.
Sian, go first.
Go.
Yeah, sure. So hi, everyone. I became interested in space at a really young age because my dad was working at the NASA tracking station during the Apollo missions. And so even though they left the island of Guam where I was born, soon after I was born, I grew up with all kinds of cool memorabilia. And I think you can see them on my wall right there. But like those are certificates my dad got during the Apollo mission, including Neil Armstrong's autograph, which is that small corner one there. And so I grew up with that around me, and just I've always been an explorer, wanting to go out and just learn as much about our world as possible. So I became a geoscientist, and then I also got my pilot's license because I always wanted to fly, and scuba certified and all of those things. And then but space was one of the things that was always that golden ticket to get up to the stars. And so I feel really fortunate that I was able to achieve that recently with the Inspiration 4 all-civilian mission to orbit.
And how
I love it, Sian. And I think it's interesting. And Summer, maybe you've heard this before, but I think there's like similar. While each of our stories is unique, I think there's always these kind of cool overlaps. I will also raise my hand to being inspired by my parents and them, sharing what they loved with me as a kid. I think that was really not just inspirational, but impactful in a way that I didn't realize at the time. So I'm hugely thankful for it. And my mom was always artsy craftsy. She sewed all of mine and my sister's clothes growing up. And I can't even imagine that. I always joke, I can barely get to Target to buy my son new underwear, let alone think about sewing all of his clothes or something. And when I was growing up a long time ago as a kid, for my mom, like macrame and pottery and, was a big hooked rugs, and so she would always involve us in that. So I think I had this kind of creative thing in my life always and loved it. And my dad built and flew small airplanes. So as kids, we spent as a family a lot of time out at the local airport, and I developed a love for flying, wanting to fly myself, but also wanting to know how things fly. And that's what led me down this path of studying aeronautical engineering. And while I was doing that at a university right up the road from the Kennedy Space Center, as the space shuttle program was getting going, I'm like, man, if you want to know how airplanes fly, why would you not want to know how rocket ships fly? And that just kind of, had its way with me, and very fortunate to work as a NASA engineer for a number of years on the shuttle and the space station program before being selected as an astronaut by NASA. But I'll tell you, I almost doubted myself right out of the opportunity. And Sian and I have talked about this before. It's amazing how we can kind of second guess ourselves, right? Or make a judgment of ourselves like, oh, why would they ever pick me? What have I ever done? I'm not, and thinking that this is just something that other special people get to do. And I just want to say, I pinch myself every day still. This very thankful to mentors that encouraged me to just pick up the pen, fill out the application, do the one thing I had total control of. And it's incredible the kind of opportunities that open up when we allow ourselves, I think, to do that.
Oh yeah, that imposter syndrome is real. It's very real.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad you brought it up because it's real in our feelings, but it's not real in the sense that you should go for it. You're good enough, you're qualified, you should always go for it and give it a shot.
Yeah.
Instead of just convincing yourself that you'll never get selected. And so you mentioned that you came from an artistic family. Sian, did you have art around in your life as well?
Yeah, my mom also, she loved to make Afghans and things like that. And I remember her taking us to, pottery to paint plates and stuff like that. But not in the sense of this was a career kind of thing. It was more, I was definitely in a science family where neither of my parents had college degrees, and my dad, really felt that was the way to get opportunity was through education and knowledge. And so he was definitely science, technology, engineering, and math. And so he really steered me and my siblings in that direction. But I'd always kind of naturally gravitated towards that area also. And so, and unfortunately, we tend to track where if you're STEM, you go this direction, if you're arts, you're this way, and they don't like to, cross them over, even though there's science and art and science. And so I was always on this one track, looking over at the art side and saying, wow, they're doing some kind of cool things, maybe one day I can go over there and take a visit. And so I think that's one of the things that I, as an educator, I try to push for is that more of that melding of the two together.
Yeah. Team STEAM all the way.
Yeah.
Oh, and you have my.
Oh, look at that. That's awesome.
And I got to paint in space, following Nicole's lead, and figuring out how to do that. And I feel very fortunate that I was able to draw and paint that. I call her Afro Gaia photo or drawing, painting. It's watercolors. And to be able to do that entirely in space was such a treat. But I got that inspiration from Nicole, who had done it before me.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask both of you about that. So what's the challenge, or what is it like? What is watercolor? How does it behave in space?
It floats like everything else, I don't know. I'm so glad, Sian, that you photo documented the way you did on your mission. I wish I would have been thoughtful enough to do that. Or I always joke, I wish I would have had a brain cell that would have, encouraged me to do that, because I think it's such a cool way to demonstrate through something creative like that. That's, I think, intriguing to people on its own. I think would be such a cool way to just show what it's like to live and work in a microgravity environment too, where everything floats, and you have to be very thoughtful again about where your stuff is. You have to think about organizing yourself in a way before you ever even start painting. And then when you are painting, I know it's just so cool to me to see how things like the reality of surface tension and the way it behaves differently in this microgravity environment play totally into how you're going to be able to paint. And I love that you're showing that picture of the ball of water on the end of the straw, because that was where I dipped my brush, was into this ball of water on the end of a straw, and just watched almost this magic thing happen where I almost get the tip of the brush to the water, and it's like the water wanted to move on to the end of the brush. And then I remember looking at the end of the brush with the ball of water on it, thinking, wow, this just looks so different than it does on Earth, you know, when there's gravity, and then moving that over to the paint. And like just before the ball of water gets to the paint sucks the water onto it, and then moving this colored ball of water around. And then realizing, you know, through trial and error, really, because I had never done this before, nobody ever told me how to do it, that to paint really required me never to touch the brush to the paper, because if I did, then the whole blob of colored water just got sucked up into the paper. So I ended up having to come up with a way to just use the brush to just drag the colored water along the paper. And I mean, I could go on and on. As you can see, I'm a rambler, and it's one of my favorite subjects. I love talking about it because I think it's so much. And again, why I'm so happy that Sian did it, you know, this on her mission, was very like excited about taking that with her, because I think these are the things where, I mean, we're putting the human in human spaceflight when we do things like paint or play music or create in whatever way, when we're wherever. And I think that's going to have to travel with us further into space as well, really considering that and blending those sides of our humanity together when we go on longer duration missions from, you know, further away from the planet too.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Go for it.
Well, I will say, and I was looking for my paintbrush here, but painting got easier, Nicole, since you last did it, because watercolors, I don't have my brush here, but what's cool is now that you can do pre-filled with water. So when you were talking about the water tension issue, it was so nice because I just would squeeze. SpaceX helped me send brushes with water pre-filled in them, and you just squeeze them. The water will come out to the bristles and will stay there. And so then I would dip it into my watercolor, and again, it would stay. So it was a lot more like painting on Earth than what you had to do, because you had to manage a larger amount of water than I had to.
Yeah, it's just, I think there's, I don't know. I just think there's the environment that you do these things in is, I don't know. I love the way it's different, you know, and there is a little bit of a challenge to it too, but it's not that it's more difficult. It's just different. And I think it really reflects just the whole experience of being in space as well, is that nothing about living there and working there is really more difficult than it is here on Earth with gravity. It's just different. And I think that's just a big part of the adventure as well, overall.
Yeah, I think that the big part that people don't realize is that, you know, you have to anchor yourself in, because you're moving as you're kind of painting and stuff, because you're at the equal and opposite force, that as you kind of like apply something, you're going to be swaying and moving, and you have to like kind of figure out how do I anchor myself to be able to do this and not myself afloat away. So that was fun. Yep.
Very cool. And there's no plein air painting. I'm sorry, Summer. This is like one of those things that's like, there's no plein air painting either, right? You know, you don't sit there in front of the window and paint what you're seeing out the window. No, because, you know, it's like, it's gone before, you know, at 17,500 miles an hour, it's gone before you know, can even get the brush to the paper.
It's so true.
I just wanted to remind everyone watching that we are going to be taking questions throughout this event. So go ahead and submit the questions if you've got them now as they come up. Das, are there any ones that you want to jump in with just yet?
Let's see here. I am almost positive we have lots of good questions. Do one more thing and I'll see how many I can pull up here.
Sure, sounds good. So I actually wanted to talk to you both also about this art, because I know specifically, Nicole, like you've started an actual foundation, and is this your full-time, are you throwing all your energy into that now that you're retired from NASA?
Yeah, I'm trying to. If I could do nothing else, that would be what I would do. But I think there's, you know, we have to kind of spread ourselves around as well. But certainly I feel like the work that we're doing with the Space for Art Foundation, which is the group, you're referring to, we have this motto of uniting a planetary community of children through the awe and wonder of space exploration and the healing power of art. And so in short, space themed art therapy projects is what we're doing with kids all over the world. And I really, really feel like I had the opportunity to fly in space so that now I could come back to Earth and do this work with the foundation. Even if there wasn't a foundation, it's just, I just discovered, wow, this is a way to bring, Sian, what you were mentioning, to bring the science, the space, and the art together, and I think a really meaningful way with these kids. And they're in places where you hope it's the worst thing they're ever going to have to go through in their entire lives. And somehow through these projects, they sit up straighter, they are feeling stronger, they're talking to you about their future, they're imagining what life in space is like, even if they might not ever want to be an astronaut and go to space. They're thinking about it in a way that is very positive, I think, for them, and is very reflective in a way that allows them to think beyond where they are at that time. And I mean, to me, I don't think I've ever been as inspired as I am when we're working on those projects. And I was really, really happy that with the Inspiration 4 mission, that Sian and her crew included us. I mean, involved us in a way that allowed us to work with the kids at St. Jude, but also to support the crew with these really cool art mission jackets. And then the crew got to create their own artwork on these jackets. And I don't know, it was just, it was really special for me. And I think for our group at Space for Art to know that we were, I think, helping in some way for the kids, that this mission was a lot about, supporting these kids in St. Jude. And for us to be able to be part of that and help them feel like they were part of the crew as well. And then to have those jackets fly in space, that was pretty awesome too.
I want to pull up that picture. Das, can you pull up the Nicole crew jackets in space photo?
Absolutely.
Because I thought that was really neat, because I was familiar with, it's kind of cropped out in our show view, but the astronaut suit, the space suit behind you, that was also a project with kids participating, correct? Like kids drawings or kids art?
Yeah, and this actually is a flat version of that first suit called Hope. And it was the very first one we did. It's each of the little paintings is from a child that was in treatment at a MD Anderson Pediatric Cancer Center in Houston. And look at that. Isn't that so cool? There you are, Sian.
I love it. It was such a good, I mean, just even having that and then raising the money for St. Jude by being able to auction those off afterwards.
Yeah, I just love that the jackets were created from the artwork primarily from the artwork of the kids at St. Jude. And then we were able to incorporate some artwork from the crew, both Jared and Chris's kids. There's pieces of their artwork included on the jackets, and Sian gave us a piece to include on the back. And Haley just wanted to do she thought of all of the St. Jude kids as her kids. So she's like, they're already on there. And then you can see on Sian's jacket there, we had where you normally would have a name tag, kind of across from the inspiration patch, we had this blank white canvas that was called the Space for Art. And so each of the crew members created their own original artwork on the jacket, and it made it even more special. And so when they were auctioned off, I think people really appreciated that, that little touch as well.
I think I zoomed in on the right part there. At first, I just got Jared's chin really big, but that's the patch you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are
beautiful.
Did you pull up that question, Das?
Oh, yes. There were actually a lot of questions about painting in space. And so let me see if I can't toss a couple out to you. Was there any special space paper? Or was it like just normal paper? Because we all know, well, is that flammable? Is it going to be a risk? Did you have to change the paper you used when you went to space? And let's start with Nicole.
No, I didn't. I didn't know enough to think that maybe there's some special paper you would use when you got floaty paints or what. But I did, though, have to submit the little paint kit and the paper to our flight crew equipment people who checked it out to make sure that I had gotten the least, the non-toxic watercolor paints,
Right.
and the paper was just. And then all of that kind of stuff on the space station, at least, if it wasn't in use, you had to store it away out of like the main cabin area. But it was pretty easy to get something approved.
Makes sense. And Sian, same for you. Did you have to like submit it? Was there special space paper that we came up with?
No, it was all regular kind of stuff. And it's funny because I'm like looking around because I have my kit and I can show people if you'll just give me a second.
Sure. Hey.
But, so I got it back and I just want to make sure, let me make sure I can find where I put it. That's the funny thing. I am looking to see if I can grab it because it's really cool to be able to show you all what that looked like because I worked with SpaceX to put this together and oh shoot, I'm not seeing it at the moment.
You need to know where that is at all times.
I'm like, I'm like trying to find it. I'm like, I know it's somewhere around here, and I'm like, I don't know where I put it. But it was, they came up with this ingenious like case that had all this Velcro in it, including my paint set.
Yeah.
And then all my watercolors, and they all had Velcro, but then the back of the case had Velcro also. So I could stick that to the back of my crew member, Chris Dombrowski's seat, and then open it up, and it had my paper in there. And then I had a clipboard, and everything was right there.
Nice.
For me to manage. But I will say, one of the caps floated away and I was like, oh no, because you gotta account for everything, because if you have moving parts like a hatch or something, and it gets caught in there, it could damage the seal and everything. And luckily it floated around the capsule and to Haley, and Haley grabbed it and was like, did you lose something? I'm like, yes, thank you. So the caps were the one thing that didn't have, we forgot to put Velcro on.
Retention. They needed some sort of retention for the. We'll improve that next time we paint in space. You learned everything.
Right.
That's something that I had never thought about. Like we talked about painting and how the water behaves, but an astronaut paint kit with Velcro all over it. That's the SpaceX made that for you, like the crew. I guess the crew equipment team.
They were like, because I gave them the paints and everything and the brushes and stuff, and they're like, well, let's engineer something for you to be organized. And they did a fantastic job, and they gave it back to me, and it's in here somewhere. You'd think that I'd be better managing where I put that, but it's definitely around here.
Hey, if you find it, maybe after the show, tweet it. That would be awesome to see on
will.
Twitter. If you find it, I'll be watching Twitter, and maybe we can share it with people that way.
Sounds good.
Excellent.
And I'm so happy you brought it back. I mean, you guys were up there orbiting, so it was right there with you. I left my paint kit on the space station thinking, because I never really I didn't think about the afterwards, right, of it. And I left it there thinking, oh, maybe somebody else will want to paint someday and they shouldn't have to bring up another paint kit, and thought I'd let the ground know where I had stashed it and everything, but still to this day, no one has found it. I cross my fingers that it didn't end up in some trash cargo vehicle and burn up in the
atmosphere. No.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and I think about it, you wouldn't throw away the keyboard, right? You wouldn't throw away the guitar or, musical instruments or anything like that. So why would you throw away a paint kit? So
I hope
hopefully
that
didn't happen.
Hopefully it's just underneath something somewhere, and one day they'll be like, oh, look at this. This is...
I say everybody that goes up now, I'm like, okay, your other mission is to find this paint kit.
The secret secondary mission of all ISS expeditions is to find the paint set. All right. Cool. There was one other question here that was sort of based on, you talked about having to hook yourself in. Like you don't want to push yourself away and, you exert force over here and it pushes you backward and you can't reach anymore or whatever, right? And so with that, we've seen some cool renders, I know, from some insides of some big shiny spaceships. But what about art like dance in space? Do y'all think that that's something somebody could do? What do you think the challenge is if somebody wanted to go up there and dance in space would be? Sand.
Well, I've seen videos. I mean, Haley was spinning from the moment she got unbuckled. So, but I've seen really cool ISS videos where they have like challenges to do like kind of
somersaults,
like expressions and things like that. And I love that because it's learning to live, work, and play in this environment, and taking advantage of the fact that you can go be in any orientation, and learning to manage that is a form of art. How your body moves in this space and how you express yourself. And I'm like a bull in a china shop. I'm like, hey, wait, I'm a high energy person, so it took me a while to be like, just try to anchor in, like not move so much, but it's a lot of fun.
Excellent. And I had this brought up here. This again was the jackets, but this was a video, and it was funny to me once I saw it. Like, was the phone upside down, or was everybody upside down? Or can the phone be upside down in space?
There is no upside down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the funny thing, though, and I don't know, Nicole, if you found this, but so in the Dragon capsule, we trained with in 1G with cupola or nose cone up. So 90% of the time when we were in the capsule, we were in this orientation, preferred, I guess you'd say, orientation, which was funny because when we were in space, it was cupola down like this and the Earth here. So mentally, you come into the space and you have a sense of what is up and what is down and what is right and what is left, even though and forward and back, even though you can be in any orientation. So being up there and being inverted, you felt more like the Earth was above you, and there was something weird when you went up into the cupola because you're like, oh my goodness, the Earth isn't supposed to be above me like this, because around you had this sense of what you think would be up, down, left, and right, even though that's arbitrary.
No kidding. That actually leads me to another really quick question. I know with the ISS, Nicole, when the ISS is orbiting, it always sort of stays with the cupola facing down. Like it sort of stays in an orientation where there's sort of a down towards the Earth looking out the cupola. Sian, did the Dragon capsule do the same thing as it orbited, or did the cupola sort of face away and then...
No, so we had two main orientations. One was that the solar panels were facing the sun.
Right.
And then that second one was with cupola down. And what... unfortunate, we all kind of regret we did have control, able to rotate and move the Dragon capsule. Nice. So the entire, for when we were phasing up and down in our orbit, we were like this, but we wish we had at one time turned and did this, particularly at night, so that we could have seen the star field and gone up and done that. But we just ran out of 3 days was not enough. Nicole would probably agree with that. It's like you need at least 5, but 100 something would be even better.
Yeah, I mean, even on the space station, we have that orientation primarily where that side of the station is facing towards the Earth as it orbits around. But I'll tell you, I think if you ask anyone, they will say that they wish there was another one of those cupola modules up on the zenith side, the top side of the station too, facing out to deep space. And not just because of the space view, although I think that's what would intrigue most of us, but just a wonderful observatory for your spacecraft too, to be able to inspect, to see, to look at things. And, the same thing in the place where the cupola was, and to fly the robotic arm from there and be able to see everything happening. But man, yeah, those videos and pictures from your flight, Sian, just at that, that additional height above the Earth and the expanse of horizon to horizon that was presented to you. It's different than the space station as well. It's just this wider, I have to imagine overwhelmingly beautiful.
Absolutely
sight,
beautiful for sure. Yes.
And I've actually got that the video of opening the cupola. You want me to show that real quick here?
Yeah, that was such a that was the best moment of the trip, was really the moment we got to open it up for the first time. It's the largest window flown in space so far. And at the cupola, it's a dome that sits on the top of our spacecraft, the Dragon capsule, underneath the nose cone. And the nose cone, it's open. And you'll notice that as we're pulling the hatch open, the thing that I didn't realize, like, I'm a geoscientist and I know that the Earth has a high reflectivity, but watch Haley's face. So she is got this job of putting a protector around the hatch opening, but watch when she finally looks up and you can just see how our capsule, that's that moment where she's like, oh, what, and we're all kind of like, wait, what? And then we rotate in and you're just like, oh my goodness. But our capsule just got flooded with Earth light. And I realized you can see how bright it is. That is not sunlight, that is Earth light, because our nose cone is towards the sun and it blocks the sun from actually coming in on us. And it's amazing how bright and beautiful our planet is. And the analogy is moonlight. When you see a full moon rising and you walk outside and you're in that attachment to the moon and how you feel under moonlight, well, the earth light is so much better. And I know Nicole feels the same way. Everybody should be bathed in earth light sometime in their life.
Yep. It is. I love the way you describe it, Sian, because I think there was just this, and I think from kind of the artistic side of it too, looking at the planet that way, I mean, there was this glow all the time, whether it was night or day on Earth, there was just this glow and this clarity like I had never seen before, just this crystal clear view of Earth, and translucence and iridescence and all those words of the essence words like seem to be the ones that best describe it. And then like all the colors that Earth to be just glowing all the time. Really, really something that I hadn't expected. I mean, I knew there was going to be beauty. It was going to be awesome. It was going to be this reality check of, oh my gosh, we live on a planet. But the feeling of it, the way it gets into you is just was completely unexpected to me.
I totally agree. And you just, it's something that you feel a longing for once you've had it. And then you leave that environment. You miss it. But that whole connection, I think that's part of the overview effect, is the fact that you get, this earth light or this earth glow, that experience that just amplifies everything, because it's not just about being up there and getting that perspective. It's actually feeling that energy that's coming off of the earth on your skin, and being like, again, just cascading across you. So every time I look up at the moon now, I don't know about you, Nicole, but when I look up at the moon and it's like a full moon rising, I'm like, yeah, you're good, but not Earth light. I'm such a moon baby. I love moonlight, and now I'm like, oh, I thought moonlight was awesome. My soul, but Earth light, that's better.
It is good. It is good. But I have to say, as a person who, I mean, I wish anybody that wanted to, and maybe even people, there's some people that don't know that they want to. I wish anybody could get up there and experience that. I'm thankful for the moon though, and its presence with us, because I think it just has a way, if we allow it to, again, if we open our hearts, our minds to it, it has a way of connecting us as well to, to who and where we are in space together. And I don't know, just this reflection that we can have considering ourselves, as earthlings on a planet. That's a pretty compelling, it's a pretty compelling thing. And oh my gosh, I wish I would have, there was a little video clip. I wish I would have shared it. It's one I use in my presentation. It's like 10 seconds long, and it's just of a lightning storm at night. And, now like layer that onto the translucence, the iridescence, the color, all of that's going on, this glow. And now you've got this these tentacles of light just wrapping around the planet, like firing, I mean, looking like neurons firing in a brain, you know, to where you're watching, and it's like you're watching the planet with the mute button on, right? Because you're not hearing all of the sounds that you would hear down on Earth. It's kind of the hum of your spaceship or your crewmates, but oh man, it's just, to me, that was the time where I was like, yeah, there is not a single thing on our planet that isn't connected in one way or another. Just that this storm is wrapping from Florida all the way around and disappearing, you know, out of my sight in Africa somewhere is it's incredible to me. And those are the kinds of things I think that we need to find ways to share, even if you can't get in space and see it from that vantage point itself. There's so many ways for us to be sharing that kind of view of what Earth is like.
I'm trying to see if this shows. This is my video, and you can see the firing of the the light. So this is artificial light here, but the firing that you see up in the little corner, that's all lightning from space. Yeah. And it just like Nicole says, it's amazing because the energy, it's all about the movement and transfer and manifestation of energy, and it really is beautiful.
Oh, there you go.
How's that?
Yeah.
All right. It took me a second to find one from NASA.
Look at that. It's just, and that's under clouds, so you get this really, really kind of strange aura of light around the lightning strikes there, and then it'll look completely different when it's on a clear sky below you. And man, no, it's like, okay, Earth's alive as well. We're just all part of each other.
It's so true.
Yeah.
I feel like I can help split the difference between your moonshine and the Earth shine, because my favorite moon is when it's a very new crescent, but the Earth is bright enough that you can see the whole circle.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
You get a little of that Earthshine effect from the Earth.
That's so good. That's so good. And that, there's a picture, I wish I had it here. Apollo astronaut Al Worden, Apollo 15 guy, and he was, the guy orbiting the moon while his crewmates were down on it. And was a poet, sadly not with us anymore, but such a cool guy. And he was a poet. And so the way he shared his whole moon experience after he got back was he wrote a book called Hello Earth that is just a collection of poetry about his training, about his favorite people, about the mission, all of it. Really, really wonderful. And the image that he has on the front of his book is a crescent Earth. So it's like, this view that you're seeing across the moon as he's flying over the moon with Earth. Oh yeah, there it is. Isn't that awesome? Oh my gosh. I get goosebumps. I just got them just thinking about that kind of experience, right? And, there's Earth as this whole planet. And it's like you're talking about, Summer, in the really high definition image, you can see all of Earth there. Just like when we look at the crescent moon, you can see with the right kind of, light, you can see that glow of the whole moon. So cool. Highly recommend that book, by the way. It's very, very wonderful.
So speaking of sending a poet, Sian, you have a book that you wrote some poems to go with your art as well, inspired by your space experience.
Yeah, it's Space to Inspire, the Art of Inspiration. And so it just documents my journey of becoming an artist and a poet, and then being able to, share that through my Afrofuturistic lens and Afro-Gaia. And so some of the things that I got to do was take art with me. And I think that we have a photo of me with one of my most famous pieces, which is called Seeker. And what I love about this piece is that I drew it before I knew I was going to space. So the original, you can see it floating there, and the poem that goes with it. But I did it for another astronaut, Richard Garriott, was going down to Challenger Deep, the deepest part of our planet in the Mariana Trench. And Guam, where I was born, is there. And he was taking art and poetry with him. And so I was able to create this piece and give it to him. And then by the time he came back up and gave it to me, I had won Inspiration 4. And I knew that this would be a really special piece. And I was going to end up donating it to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. But before that happened, that same piece went down to the Titanic with another NASA astronaut that Nicole knows, Scott Parazynski, 5-time shuttle astronaut. And him and his wife took it down to the Titanic. And then it came back up. And then it went to space with me and my crew members. So I call it adventure art that goes on adventure. And it's, six astronauts signed the back of it, and it got donated at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, and it helped contribute to the $250 million that we raised during the Inspiration 4 mission.
Incredible.
I'd be willing to guess that that's probably the most well-traveled piece of art.
I don't know, Voyager spacecraft, I kind of think of everything that we create to some extent is an expression of art, but, with that and the emblems etched on it, the golden record, I feel like that's the ultimate ambassador of travel space art.
All right, well, second best then.
Second best, I love that. I think that there's no, and the chances of that being repeated, maybe it'll be something in the future, but to go to the deepest part of our planet, the most iconic shipwreck, and then out into space and back, I feel very special about it.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible. So
Very
Sian,
cool.
when you were up there for your 3 days, was there specific agenda that all 4 of you needed to act on, or did you have set aside time specifically to do your personal endeavors?
We did have time to do our personal endeavors. Like I wanted to paint and Chris wanted to play the ukulele and things, but we did a lot of science. And Nicole has that same shared experience that the ISS is a floating laboratory. And so up there with the Dragon capsule, we did a lot of biomedical stuff. We had the butterfly ultrasound where we were, our eyeballs, we were doing all kinds of like measurements of that and our interjugular vein, and then also our bladders, doing bio swabs of ourselves and the capsule to see how microbiomes move in between individuals, but also the environment that we inhabit. And so a lot of like good research to help advance human spaceflight.
I love it. Summer, I'm glad you asked that question because I think that, you look at the Inspiration 4 mission, raising money for research down here on Earth, that's so important. I mean, that seems like a lame word to use. But, it's just critical, right? And then this idea of what we're doing in space and the kind of money that's spent to go to space and to do these missions. But I think that everything about these missions, the science, the way we build the spacecraft, the relationships of, the 4 people on that Inspiration 4 crew and the team they had on the ground supporting them, the, 6 or 7 crewmates on the space station representing 15 or 16 different countries at any one time as one crew, the hardware itself, the engineering that went into it, everything about it in one way or another, and in most ways purposefully, is ultimately about improving life on Earth. And that's, I don't know, I just think, and in the work that you're doing, Summer, too, where we're looking out into space and discovering so much more about who and where we are, our relationship, not just to ourselves and our own planet, but to the universe around us. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are the kinds of things that human beings need to be doing. And they're the kinds of things that lift us up, right? And put us in a place where we can respond, hopefully, as Earthlings, in the most positive ways to the challenges that we have. And I know there's a lot going on these days, but we just really, I think we should take real, there's like a joy in what comes from this kind of exploration that's brought back to, not just the people that have flown in space, but to everyone, that we share the planet with. And I wish there were, ways for us just to get more and more people understanding this relationship that we have as we do this exploration, and just the value of the work that's going on there that's coming back. Oh, look at you sharing that was the creation of the Unity art spacesuit. And each of those little triangles is a kid's piece of art. That suit was built from kids in pediatric cancer centers in all of the space station partner countries. And you can see it had the chance to fly on the space station. That's Jack Fisher wearing the suit. Some of the kids that worked on it talking from mission control. And that was not just in Houston, but in the other mission control centers. That's Peggy Whitson wearing the suit, doing a really good job flying through the space station in it. And man, I'll tell you, it's kind of funny. Every astronaut sees these art spacesuits is like, why can't our suits look like that? Why do we have to have just the white things now? And so I don't know if you saw, but ILC Dover, I will just say the spacesuit company, the one who made the suits that walked on the moon, the one that made my suit that I did a spacewalk in. They've been volunteering with us since the very beginning to quilt this artwork, these kids' artwork together into these suits. And, it's kind of fun. We've been working with them on ideas like for the real crews now, to be able to incorporate something into their spacesuit that's personalized, right? Even if it's just like the wristband for the mirror, could they have their own pattern, or, maybe even paint on it or something, or the little stripes that you put on your leg to mark which crew member is which, so Nicole has the red stripe, Danny's got the white stripes, so because we all look the same out there, in those spacesuits, something to have that little personal touch to it. Because I think in the future, we're all going to have our own, customized, personalized suits. But yeah, these would be beautiful ones to have, I think.
Yeah.
I get to say that I had my own personalized suit.
Yeah.
I think we have a photo of all of us, but it was kind of cool that they came in and did that. It'll be fun to see, like you were saying, Nicole, the evolution of the spacesuit, and to some extent the democratization of the sizes.
Yeah.
for people of all size to be able to go up and experience this. I'd like to say that as we're going to the moon, Mars, and beyond, how do we make that a just, equitable, diverse, and inclusive space? And one of the things is in that idea of the spacesuit, and being able to have that kind of personalized suit that fits.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I will just throw a shout out to my ILC Dover friends again. And they're, the advanced designs that are coming out, that's very much what, the goal is. First of all, to get it as light as possible. And, there will be the day our friend Dava Newman, who, she's got like the pressure suit kind of version, where this goal of just it being like the mechanical pressure suit where, you're walking out and it looks like you got a wetsuit on, right? That's really something to dream of, quite honestly. I mean, I love that there's work going on with that. In the meantime, though, with the materials we have and what we know about how to make it lighter and more functional, ILC Dover is doing such wonderful work, and built into that is this customization of fitting every size. And that could have been done before, but sadly, NASA chose not to purchase the smaller suits. But there's ways around, you can still get out there and do it. But these new suits, I love that is just like, just part of the plan is that it just make it simple to be modularized and customized to any size.
Yeah. I wanted to jump in real quick. That's something that I had never thought of, and y'all really rang a bell with me. We talk about, the spacesuit fitting and functional things and form and that sort of thing, but there's also an expression available via the spacesuit. You think about it from sci-fi, like the Belters helmets are decorated and this sort of thing, right? I wonder how close we are to getting that to where there's enough people in space that there's more expression. It's not just everything straight-laced, all the same, right? But it's more personalized because more people are able to go to space.
Well, we already do it. We do it already. Every crew has their mission patch, right? Yep. And so you can customize that way. You get to have your name tag on there. There's little things that have always been built into kind of that human reflection within our suits. You've got people on their spacewalking checklist that, put a picture of their family in there, get it, out there, or draw something on it. But I think I will move more and more to balancing out kind of the technical needs of what the suit needs to be, right? There's significance in why it's a white suit, from a thermal standpoint, doing spacewalk. So maybe that Unity suit would not be the best idea in terms of surviving out there doing your spacewalk. But there are ways that we can embellish or, make it known that this is me out there, through our own creativity or having somebody else do that for us.
Yep.
Yeah, and taking it even one step further, I think last year was the Astro Access sub, zero G flight that was specifically for people with a range of abilities. And so designing suits for their use too is going to open up an entire new area.
Yeah, I'll tell you, and Sian, I don't know how you felt about this, but I mean, there was something so liberating about being able to just move effortlessly in 3 dimensions, right? Just have your brain figure out that, just gently touching and moving and having that become kind of this second nature to you is a really impressive thing about how our brains and our bodies work in new environments. And they do it quickly. In good ways and bad ways, right? The good way is you figure out how to move effortlessly in this 3 dimensions and it just becomes so natural. The bad way is that your brain and your body figure out, hey, I don't need bones or muscles anymore to survive in this environment. I'm not going to waste any energy maintaining those things. So we have to counteract it with exercise and nutrition and all this stuff. But I mean, I remember being in space it was very shortly after getting there the first time and just being like, oh my gosh, I wish my cousin Marianne could be here. I mean, she was one person in particular, because this is a woman who went her whole life just debilitated by, from as early as I can remember, her hands were just like crinkled up with arthritis, her whole body, she was in pain all the time. And all I could think was like, man, Marianne would love this. It's just like takes the load off of all of your joints and your body just feels this freedom, I guess it's freedom from gravity. I don't know, but in a way that relieves pain, even relieves this pressure on yourself that I can't wait for the time when, when people can experience that in a way that's healthful for them. That is making them feel better in a really, in a medical therapeutic way as well. I think we have that to look forward to.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
Das, are you accruing some more questions?
I am overwhelmed with good questions, honestly. If we want, I can continue. We may have to do a little bit of a speed round here because I have 5 different screens open with questions from 5 different streams that are going out, and every one of them has good questions. So there's a lot of discussion about the painting in space. People are really interested because we all get, here's this and here's that, and here's how we take photos, but painting in space is sort of a special thing. So how did the colors mix in space? Were you doing watercolor where you tried to mix any colors together, or was it sort of pre-mixed, then if you tried to mix it, it would mess up? Sian.
Yeah, and I think you might be able to, on my website, there is a me painting in space on my YouTube channel that you could pull up. But it was, again, being able to take individual colors, a little bit of mixing, but for the most part, I kept them separate in that one painting that I did. And you can just see that I like metallic paints. I like the way it shimmers. And so, but I also got to draw in using markers. And so one of the things that I drew while I was in space was my Dragon capsule using markers that I brought. The original looks like this, where you can see, and just being able to put that together, because I was like, I was thinking about that. I was like, well, markers, because we bring Fisher pens or a pencil, but pressurized pens to be able to write with. So I was like, well, okay, will markers work? I'm wondering, wait, okay, I got to bring some markers and see what this was like. And I'm pleasantly surprised that it was easy to use.
Excellent. Did you do any mixing of paints, Nicole?
I really didn't. My artistic skills are all experimental as it is. The idea of mixing was not, I mean, that, inadvertently with the colors on the paper and stuff, but I didn't like purposely say, oh, I need to mix these two colors together to make another color or anything like that. I suppose you could do it. And, Richard, Sian mentioned Richard Garriott. And when Richard flew, he flew before both of us did on his mission to station. And his mom was an artist. And so in tribute to her, along with a lot of the educational outreach stuff he was going to do, he brought acrylic paints to station with him. And he made a plastic glove box.
Right.
And I credit Richard with being the first to paint in space with anything. And he stuck paper up on all the walls of this plastic glove box.
Huh.
And he'll tell you he didn't really paint. He'll tell you, I just let the paints do what they would do in zero gravity, which is so cool. Very Jackson Pollock, right? He just squirted all these colors of acrylic paint into the box and then let them hit how they would just from moving in microgravity. There's the dog barking. Muting.
That's so funny because I was really curious because Nicole's Wikipedia page said the first person specifically to paint watercolor. And I was like,
yeah. And, I'm always leery of that first person to do anything thing. And so I'm like, please, I painted in space. It's great. It doesn't matter if it was the first person to do whatever it was. Yeah. But for some reason, people like to latch onto that. But I will credit Richard with being like, he brought paints purposely, had in mind what he wanted to do, how he wanted to share it. And it's so cool. He got some really cool paintings from doing that, just letting microgravity do its thing with the paints. And then, he brought those paintings back, and kind of like what went on with Inspiration 4 and, contributing to something, important. Richard donated, auctioned some of those paintings off on behalf of, I think it was the Challenger Centers. And so, really cool to see this human side of spaceflight come out, the human and human spaceflight. And I think we're going to see more of it. It's happened since the very beginning of spaceflight. Astronauts, cosmonauts have been bringing what they love with them to space. And, Alexei Leonov drawn colored orbital sunrises and sunsets on his first flight. And then, these days we need to be thinking about that handshake, that Apollo-Soyuz handshake that happened where Alexei on that mission drew pencil, charcoal pencil portraits of all of his crewmates. And Tom Stafford still has that portrait above his fireplace in his home. And musical instruments and poetry and painting, and our friend Karen Nyberg, who quilted while she was in space. I mean, these things, whether they're approved or not, it's what humans want to do in space, right? It's what humans want to do wherever they are. And so I love, when we discover new stories about, and you asked about dancing goes on in space. You can do, I did ballet when I was young, and I had this for Halloween. We created costumes from just stuff oh my gosh, there it is. Yeah. And so, that was a thermal cover on the Japanese cargo vehicle HTV that we had to take off when it first got there. But oh my gosh, is it not the perfect skirt? Like this beautiful, and it just floated. This light material just floated around. And so, kind of danced in it. But Janice Voss, early shuttle astronaut, she was a ballroom dancer. And so she somehow packed up really tiny this skirt, like ballroom dancing skirt with her, and brought it on one of her missions. And for the life of me, I can't find a picture of it, but she, kind of went through the motions of ballroom dancing in space. I mean, we're gonna improvise and figure out how to do the things we love wherever we are.
Yeah, I feel like I can hear this photo. Like, was this crinkly material? I feel like I could
It's
hear
a little
it crinkly.
crinkly, yeah.
Yeah, Summer, go ahead. Sorry.
Very pretty.
Oh, have you all heard of the Dance Your PhD contest? Oh, it's been going on for several years. I think it might be AAAS. I'm not sure, but I just envision that like the next level of that would be cool in space.
Did you find the paint kit?
Is that the paint kit?
So here's the paint that what I did on orbit. And then this was my paint kit that SpaceX helped me design. And so when you unlatch it, you have paper. So this is the paper that flew in space. Now I got to make some more art. It's flown in space. But this is the actual paint set. And so you can see that there's Velcro on the back here. But when you open it up, let me just do it this way. So these are my paints, and these are the water brushes with the actual water. I haven't taken any of this stuff out or any of it, but this is what I had in space with me, and all of these. And again, it's all Velcro, so you can pull things out and then put it back however you needed it. But I kind of keeping it like this because I'm like, it's an archive.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I can use my space water to paint some more stuff, but I'm kind of like, I don't know what to do.
Don't use it.
You know, in Arizona, make sure it doesn't dry out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's all. Thank you so much for finding that and holding it up so we could see what it's like. It's like a not quite a space trapper keeper sort of thing, but all the little things you don't think of. You need Velcro on it, and you stuck it on the back of Chris's seat, I think you said, right?
Yes, and even just organizing things. So, because if you open something up, it all floats out and away.
Yep.
And so when I was thinking about what to bring to space, because we were very fortunate in that instead of SpaceX saying, you know, you've got this much space, you know, they said, here's a duffel bag. You can fill it up.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And figuring out, well, okay, well, what are the important things that I want to take with me to document this journey? How do I bring as many people along, you know, friends and family and students? I took student art and poetry with me. I took, you know, jewelry from friends and family members, trinkets, special items. And then, of course, for myself, you know, a lot of the stuff that growing up as a childhood, you know, I brought this went to space with me, Nichelle Nichols' little doll, because Star Trek. And, you know, when we talk about representation, and the first time I saw myself, you know, represented in space was Nichelle Nichols. And, you know, a lot of people don't realize this, but she did a lot for trying to increase diversity, working with NASA and the astronaut program and stuff back when the shuttle first came out.
You just seem to have like a bunch of stuff that you took to space with you, just sitting around. Like you have so much stuff. Like you said, a duffel bag. I always think like, oh yeah, the NASA lets the astronauts take this one little teeny tiny cube of stuff, and it's it's volume limited, mass limited, and then it's like, oh my gosh, they let him take a guitar to space? That must be crazy. But you seem to have a lot of stuff that came back from space with you.
Yeah, well, we were really fortunate, you know, in how we allocated that, because a paint took up that paint set, obviously had to fit into my duffel bag. Yep. And then just like little things, but, you know, 90% of it was other stuff for other people to give away, you know, or to, you know, that they wanted to fly so that they could come on this journey with me. You know, again, one of the proudest moments for me was to bring up 32 pieces of art from students. And to be able to, I'm going to be giving it back to them actually next month. Nice. And for them to know that their art flew in space, just again, something special.
Yeah. That's so cool. I'm going to keep grabbing some questions here because we have all sorts of great questions about this is what we're doing. We're sharing experiences. Here's one that I have personal experience with. You know, you're taking pictures with your phone, and if you go over too far, it's like, oh, the picture's upside down, right? Because it's got a little sensor in it, and it tries to figure out what the orientation's supposed to be. I can't even take normal pictures without my phone messing it up, and then I have to rotate it. So when you were taking the videos, I think this came through when we were showing that one video where the phone was upside down or not. Did the phones have trouble figuring out which way was up and down? Like, were your pictures all upside down and sidewards?
No
kidding.
Issue with that whatsoever. Yeah, which is kind of funny, right? So we're now again, a lot of the things, because like our pictures of us looking out on the Earth, because we were inverted, we flip them in post so that it seems like it looks kind of normal.
Okay.
But for us, it was like, that whole thing of looking up and there was the Earth and then the moon's off to the side and the blackness of space. And you're your brain is like, wait, what is this? For 2 weeks afterwards, I dreamt about floating in space. I think my brain was just like trying to process what just happened.
So this wasn't the phone being confused and not knowing which way is up and down. This was like artistic license.
No, well, that could be because looking at this might be what Jared shot.
Yeah.
I don't see him in it, so I think he's actually he's upside down to us, and the phone is just picking that up, and
Gotcha.
he just never took the time to rotate it.
Okay. I need to take my phone to space so it knows which way is up. Let's see here. I'm going to keep grabbing questions. Folks that are viewing, you're asking so many good questions. I'm trying to coagulate some together. We talked about the colors mixing. Here is a good one. What's the view like at night? Like, did you have a light switch so that you could turn the lights on and off so you could see better? Or were you always facing towards the Earth? Is that a thing on the Dragon capsule, Sian? Is that a thing on the space shuttle, Nicole?
Yeah, well, we were always facing the Earth during our 3 days there,
Right.
and so but we didn't always have the forward hatch open to go up into the cupola, but we also had the dragon eyes, and so the front of the Dragon has these that you could look out at, and then we would turn out the lights, to go to sleep and stuff like that. So there was a couple of times where we dimmed the lights just so that we could get that view. But like Nicole was saying, Earth glow even at night. You're like, bright and beautiful, and so you're always kind of. It was amazing to see our built environment and just how we terraform our planet, and you can see that in the form of lights.
Yeah. I sort of envision the NASA shuttle mission where it's like, oh, geez, let's radio to mission control and ask if we can turn off the lights or something, versus Inspiration 4 like, hey, Haley, can you hit the light switch? And she's like, sure. There's probably a touch screen or something for it. But
there was a touch screen.
Okay.
We could take off the lights.
Yeah. And Nicole,
well, we could turn off the lights anytime we wanted too. They didn't. And we would do that, like in the cupola on the station, the bay window there as well. You could get it pretty dark in there to, then allow your eyes to adjust, with that glow of Earth, and then out, into space, even the space surrounding it, the Earth glow of the atmosphere showing up, getting to see more stars and things in the, in your own like vision view. The cameras can pick up a lot more than our eyes can, the sensitivity that they have with taking the pictures, especially if you get it super dark inside. It's just like when you're down here and you want to, see the night sky. You don't want those city lights, flushing it out. But that was really special to be able to do that. And then, like Sian said, it's like our presence, it really is like okay, that's where people are. That's where people aren't. It's just this indicator of, here's where the mass of humanity is on Earth by the lights. And then if you're smart, like a guy like Don Pettit, who does a whole study on if the lights are this color glowing, that means they use this kind of lighting still in that country versus this kind of lighting. And you can see that as a footprint as well. Pretty interesting.
Almost like technological development. Like these are halogen lights versus LED lights and color temperatures. I'd never thought about that.
Yeah.
No kidding. Here's another question and I didn't mean to exaggerate too much. Like I think I hear stories of radioing mission control to change the temperature in the ISS or something like that. So I didn't know if there were light switches or not. Let's see. Did your way of painting or enacting your art change after your experiences in space? So start with Nicole on this one. You said you were sort of dabbling with it. You didn't forget or hold its paintbrush differently or anything, did you?
Well, I think when I paint now, I just try to remember what it was like to paint in space, to always just to recall that when I'm painting. I think the way art has changed for me since coming back is that I've got so much inspiration from the pictures that I took from space that I want that to be my subject. I mean, that really using art as a way to share what I experienced up there, like really wanting that to be the subject of my artwork. And so when I do something personally, that's where it's at. It's like, the Bahamas or, a Salt Lake in Australia or somewhere like that. And then, this picture you're showing of this little girl, well, so that's the wave. That's another version of the wave. Go back and forth.
Yeah. I got it. Sorry.
But, this little girl is the one who this was that pivotal moment for me, I think, where I realized, that what we're doing with the Space for Art Foundation, which did not exist at that time, that was like one of the very first painting sessions we did in Houston. And I mean, this little girl said to me, she's in the hospital for, she's got this little hat on because she's got no hair, she's 6 or 7 years old. And she's telling me about how, oh, Miss Nicole, you're what you do as an astronaut, but must be a lot like what happens to me in the hospital. And I'm like, what in the world? How, and my friend, Ian Sian, who was the founder of the Art and Medicine program at MD Anderson, he said, yeah, these kids, you will be so surprised. They will come out with some of the most beyond their years wisdom kinds of things when they're talking to you. And she just went on to say, yeah, when you're an astronaut in space and just like me in the hospital, you can't go out anytime you want. You just can't go outside. You can't see your family and friends the same way. You have to eat all different kinds of food. Your body's changing. They're doing all kinds of tests on you. I think you have radiation in space. I mean, I was floored by this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, so much in that little, 2 minutes worth of what she said to me. And it just made me realize, first of all, okay, I've got to keep doing this stuff. We've got to figure out how to keep doing this work with these kids and these art projects where they, it becomes a community thing, a global planetary community thing for them. And then it applies, everything she said applies to us as humans traveling further off our planet, right? So, I mean, imagine, every place we've gone so far as humans in space, we've had that glowing view of Earth out the window. But we're talking about going to Mars, right? We're on that, still, 7 to 9 month journey. At some point, you're going to cross this line in space where you don't see Earth as Earth out the window anymore. It's going to transition. It's like this dot of light that is Earth, but it doesn't look like those blues and greens and browns and whites anymore. And we're going to need, even in that relatively small spaceship that they're talking about for those first missions, we're going to need to do the kinds of things that Sian and I did in space. We're going to need to do the kinds of things we're doing with these kids in these programs, because we have to be able to have that humanity with us. We have to have this creative outlet. Sian, you mentioned Star Trek. I mean, I'm hopeful that it'll be the holodeck, that we'll have this holodeck kind of thing. But whatever it is needs to allow us to express ourselves while we're on these journeys. And I don't know, she just hit it on the head, man, with everything she said that day. And I think about it all the time. Yeah, I really do.
Imagine going from this, right, looking out the Dragon cupola or the ISS cupola, to something like this.
Yeah.
That's the Earth from Mars. Right there, one little pixel. It's not the big expanse of blue and white down below you. It is one little dot in the sky. Never thought of that before.
And even, we talk about we've only gone as humans, 250,000 miles to the moon, but all these exploration missions that have taken us, you mentioned Voyager, taking us with them out into, the greater expanses of space. And that picture, like you just showed, those are the ones we love the most, right? We want to learn all about Saturn and the rings of Saturn. And, you got the Juno mission at Jupiter showing us different, the polar kind of views now of Jupiter. And we want to know all that. But this is the picture we want to see. We want to see that little dot of light below the rings or that dot of light on the horizon of Mars. We want to see it, make that relationship, that connection back to who and where we are in the picture, kind of a space selfie, I guess. I don't know, but, it becomes really important to us to make that connection.
Absolutely. Wow, this is fantastic, y'all. Thank you so much for all the time you're spending with us here. I still got some more questions. I hope I've been hitting lots of good questions for y'all, not just the same questions that you always get.
Can I interrupt you, though, and
course.
ask Summer a question? Because if that's okay, because, we've got the whole James Webb thing going on, right? There was that really cool, like, focusing the instrument, picture that came back recently with all those little kind of blurry stars, galaxies, whatever I don't know this stuff, but in that view. And when we talk about bringing together like science and art, I think astronomy, astrophysics has done so much of that. And not just for us, like seeing the beautiful Hubble imagery or the what's going to come to us from Webb, but for the scientists too, that our brains process better those false color images than they do the ones and zeros. So how do you think that all this James Webb stuff is going to, further reinforce that? And what little gifts do you think we're going to, get from it?
Well, I think what's going to be true about JWST is sort of what's been true about everything up to now, like when with Hubble, is that you don't know. It's going to be something that we don't expect. Similar to how impactful the Hubble ultra deep field has been. That was something that was a total surprise, and now it's to me it's a work of art, but it also tells an incredible story, and you can pull so much information out of that one piece of sky that from Earth to any earthbound telescope looked empty and completely bare. And so I feel like you can't predict what it's going to be with JWST, but it'll be something on that magnitude that just it'll blow our minds and just be this whole other way of thinking about something, or we'll discover, even with the ultra deep field, I think they did some extra work on that and then discovered we were undercounting the galaxies by like 2 trillion.
Nearly.
There's no way that we know everything and that everything we know right now is correct. It's just going to like swoop in and change our minds on something, if not many things. And I'm thrilled to have it. I can't wait to see like what we get wrong next.
I love it. I mean, to me, it's like it's just this reminder that like awe and wonder, it just surrounds us everywhere. And it's whether you're on a spaceship looking back at Earth, or you're on Earth looking out into space, or transporting something like one of these telescopes to a place where, we as humans aren't going to be anytime soon, and allowing it to be our eyes and open up our minds even more. I just think, I hope people are paying attention to this. I really do.
Yeah, I hope so too. And to me, it just feels like it's one big continuous thing that we've always done as humans. Like we started by just looking up and trying to learn more about how we live our lives by what's going on up there, because it was starting to tell us day versus night and seasons and summer and winter and harvesting and things like that. And then navigation and, et cetera, et cetera. So I think sometimes we've kind of stopped looking up maybe as an entire civilization, but I hope we can kind of get back to it. On that scale.
So cool.
Yep. Absolutely. A couple more little questions here, I think. Again, folks, please understand there's like hundreds of questions coming in, and I'm honestly looking for questions that aren't the same old questions like, what does it feel like to float? Like all those normal things. And art questions. Awesome. There we go. We can answer that one really quickly. I'm trying to get some new questions, some art related questions about their experience. So I'm not, there's just so many questions coming in. Here is one really quickly. It's for Nicole. You flew on Discovery's final mission, STS-133. Have you been to see the orbiter in her retirement at the Smithsonian? And same for you, Sian. Sorry, why do I keep saying that? Do you have any opportunity to visit your spaceship? You ever go back there and say like, oh, yep, this right here slaps on roof of spaceship or whatever? So have you seen Discovery, Nicole?
Yes, I have. I'm so thankful that we can see these spacecraft. I'd love to still see them flying, but oh my gosh, Discovery was, I remember hearing the word bittersweet used all the time as we were doing those final flights of each of the vehicles. And I'm like, how can sweet be anywhere in the word that it needs to be like bitter sad, because that's what I'm feeling. I'm like, and then we landed after 133, and there were, I don't know if it's ever happened before, there were like 0 in-flight anomalies with the spacecraft. I mean, nothing that we had to do on orbit that required us to tinker with anything or fix something or adjust it, whatever. It was just this like flawless mission. And then, I remember landing and being on the runway, and, we're doing the walk around, and then we do, it's kind of the class. I know, Sian, you guys did the same thing on the recovery boat, and, with the pictures, and then back with the spacecraft, kind of this tradition of just having those photos taken post-flight. But I remember thinking, like, just looking back at it, I'm like, you know what? If you've got to roll back to the hangar to be, taken off now to a museum, look at you just like standing, like strong on your own landing gear, brought it back. I mean, just like in as good a condition as that vehicle had ever been in, coming back home on its final flight. And that's what I think about when I'm at the Smithsonian and I see, Discovery on its gear in that, that display, is that moment on the runway, like, man, you brought it back good, showed what this vehicle can do. And then I'm very thankful to I get over to Kennedy Space Center quite often, and I can see Atlantis. That was my ride home the first time. And just that on display in a way that's, so totally different to how the others are. Yeah. And,
it really is. Thankful. It's such a cool way that it's displayed. Sian, how about you? You got a chance to visit Resilience?
No, the whole point of like reducing the cost of launch capabilities is flight proven hardware, right? Yeah. And so it gets put back into the queue, and so didn't get to visit it. But I am going for the shuttle trifecta in a month. So I was just under Discovery with General Charlie Bolden and Joan Higginbotham, 2 NASA astronauts, partying and having dinner. It was amazing. And then next month, I'm off to Yuri's Night in California, and then off to Kennedy Space Center in Florida. So I'll get my 3 shuttle trifecta. Yes. But I am hopeful that, one of the things that we did get, we're working on is our spacesuits. Inspiration 4 was such a historic moment where we'll end up, and so stay tuned, because that's going to be a fun thing to think about from a historic perspective, because most of the time your spacesuit ends up going back into the training mix. But it was designed specifically for us individually. Yeah. And luckily, because the mission was so kind of historic for commercial spaceflight, we'll be able to share that with the world.
Nice. You don't have it hanging in your closet right now, do you? I mean, just under your desk or something.
I do. I sleep, at night. I kind of go around my house wearing it. No, SpaceX has them, but we're in talks about potentially being able to put those on display somewhere. And that to me is really exciting, because then I will be able to visit it. It's like my second skin.
Nice. Yep. Hey, really, really quickly, a really nice message from our friend Jean down at South Padre saying, having a barbecue at the house with Tim and Mary Liz and Ryan. And they're missing you. Some of the NASA Spaceflight friends down there at Boca, and they sent in a nice message a little while ago. So that's for you, Sian. All right. And so here is one thing that we haven't had a chance to talk about at all. You've seen Dr. Proctor holding up her book on occasion, right? And maybe through the Zoom call, it's not always easy to see. I know that if I were to do it and try to show some things here like this and show you the art or anything like that, it's tough to convey over a Zoom call, right? So you can actually get a copy of your book, right? Sian? Yeah,
it's available on Amazon. I self-published. And so, if you just look for Space to Inspire with the number 2 or Sian Proctor, it will want to autocorrect to Sian Proctor. But do you have a favorite poem, a piece of art or poem from the book that you like?
You know, there was, I'm not going to be able to flip to it very quickly, but there was one that I did like a triple take on, and it was the painting, the drawing. It was like a charcoal drawing of the lion. Where is it?
Oh, Leo?
Yes.
Yes,
I thought that was
Leo, my
it's
call
in here.
sign.
I know that
Yeah,
it's in here. It's in here. I know it's in here. But that's the one that caught my eye the most because I'm like, oh, well, you have it up right there. Apparently, yeah.
Well, it's for my call sign.
Yeah.
Is Leo, and a lot of people are like, Leo, are you, astrology? Are you Leo, or are you, or is that low Earth orbit?
Low Earth orbit, yeah.
It was my crew members and the Inspiration 4 team gave me that because they considered me to be a modern day Renaissance woman combining art and science. And so it's after Leonardo da Vinci. So I'm a modern day Leo.
Excellent. So let's get some of those links in chat. Like you said, it's on Amazon. I think it's on your website as well. It goes to space2inspire.com, right? MySpace2Inspire.
MySpace2Inspire.com or Amazon. And then
Yep.
Nicole, you also have a book.
Yeah,
Well,
I do.
She does have a book.
Look at you.
So instead of
I
me
do.
flipping through this, tell us a little bit about your book. This is
A little bit different. It's was really I had never wanted to do a memoir, but I knew that there was I think and Sian, I think through your poetry you've expressed this. I think there's probably another book in you at least about this whole experience and what's to come. To me, it was important for us to consider, what we've been doing in space, this work we've done on the International Space Station, this life support system we built in space, and how we have just absolutely figured out how to work as crewmates there. Not passengers. We are actively, proactively, all those active words involved with how we live, survive in that place so that we can do the science with this international community, improving life on Earth, and how it's just a really wonderful model. The ways that we do that are just a really wonderful model for how we should be living like crew down here on Spaceship Earth. So that's the intention. I hope everyone who reads it will come away, that they'll learn something. First of all, something will be surprising to them, but also that they'll come away with their own personal call to action to, to figure out that crewmate thing.
Yeah.
I think it's really important.
And you've got Space for Art Foundation is one of the websites. You have your own website as well. And I can tell you that if you just go on Amazon and look for Nicole Stott's book, it will come up. And through the miracles of next day shipping, we did a tech check yesterday, and I didn't have a copy of this book. And now I do.
Yes, you do. Good for you.
I have not had a chance to dive into it yet. It was literally delivered up to the studio in the middle of the show.
Hey.
So, hey, timing was perfect. But
That station thing doesn't work when you're in the middle of
in
the
New
desert.
Mexico.
No.
Not so much.
Oh, but unfortunately, that does bring us up to just past 5 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time here. I remember to say daylight this time.
Wow.
Because the times have changed here recently. But that is going to bring us to the end of today's Virtual Astronomy Live show here with Intrepid Museum. Sian, Nicole, thank you so much for spending so much time with us here. This was fantastic.
Pleasure. Thanks, you guys.
Absolutely. I mean, just hearing about your experiences, it's always something new. It's always something I haven't thought about, in a new perspective on things, in something else to think about, a different frame to look at it through. That's so important to get. So getting guests like y'all on here so that we can just get different sorts of experience. It's not just all about the rocket launch. It's not just all about this, oh, look at this massive SRB somebody built. There's so much more to it, especially, like y'all said, going to space and wanting to be humans. It's not just running a checklist and, all the sort of things we think about, like, oh, do the science experiments, this, that, the other. When you go there, you are still a human being, and getting the opportunity to express yourself and to go there and be, right, is something that I haven't thought too much about. It's not something you really raises at the top of your mind, but it really does need to. As we get more and more people into space, I hope we get more and more experiences like this. And y'all did a fantastic job sharing with us here today. Thank you again so much. Chat's saying the same thing. All right. And then
Summer, love the shirt.
Yep. Folks, Summer Ash as well. Summer is a moderator here with the show. She helps us go through our questions and keep things on track. Summer, thank you so much for the time here on Sunday as well.
Always a pleasure.
All right.
It was an extra special one today.
It really was. This was a fantastic time. But that is going to bring us to the end of the show here this month. Remember, next month there is going to be another Astronomy Live with Intrepid Museum, but it's going to be on site. Some special things happening actually at the Intrepid. And I'm working on potentially getting myself out there with our broadcast gear so that we can continue to share it with y'all. But for now, we're going to go ahead and sign off for Virtual Astronomy Live for this month. Again, Dr. Sian Proctor, thank you so much. Nicole Stott, thank you so much. Summer, always a good time. But for now, we will see you nerds later. Thanks for watching, y'all.
Wrong way.